Ah, say, virtual group hug. I realize today's Mother's Day, and that can bring a whole spectrum of emotions and reactions depending upon what your experience was. I mean, while many of us had pleasant experiences, others had unpleasant experiences with their mothers, or perhaps somebody else had to step into that mother role. It can be challenging. And then there are other factors too, like it's odd that both Carla and me, our fathers, passed away just a couple days before Mother's Day. So there's kind of a bittersweet sweetness to Mother's Day for us. But I just wanted to just take a moment to just honor everyone who willingly or unwillingly had to step into a mother's role. I just think we should show you our appreciation. And I know on the way out we will have we've got several vases or vases of roses. We want to have every mother have a rose on the way out. So appreciate that. Oh yes, mothers. Mothers of feathered and furry ones too, and Mother Earth. Right. Okay. Got it. Everybody gets a rose. Yeah, right. Well, unity, of course, has a unique approach to the Bible, in that we recognize that all of the narrative stories in the Bible have symbolism embedded in them that helps us live as spiritual beings having a human experience. We start in Genesis with Adam and Eve, where there was just that sense of the first awakening to the fact that there's God and there's something bigger than us, to the Christ consciousness in the New Testament. And then, of course, the book of Revelation, that final battle when we're really embracing the spiritual principles, but we're still having a lot of negativity come up in our thoughts or experiences. So the title today of the lesson is Mother's Day in Defense of Eve. And I think it's important that we recognize what Adam and Eve meant to us. Adam is the thinking nature that is in with all of us. Every male character in the Bible represents some aspect of our thinking nature. And then every female represents some aspect of our feeling nature. So let's take a look at the passage from the Bible that so many people reference as far as Eve and what she did right or did wrong. Genesis, 3rd chapter, starting with the first verse. Now the serpent was more subtle than any other wild creature that Jehovah God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God say, 'You shall not eat of any tree of the garden'?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden. Neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' The serpent responded, 'You will not die. For God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be open, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths." Eve, first female character in the Bible, first mother in the Bible. What does Eve represent? That very basic feeling nature, emotional nature, that is in all of us, and at that very base level, like when we're first starting out and finally beginning to realize there's something bigger than us. As I mentioned, Adam is a thinking nature. We could not experience life without an Adam and Eve within us, working together. In fact, the part of the Bible where it says, "Let no man, what God has put together, let no man tear asunder." The male, the female, the thinking and the feeling nature. If you're just going with one, you're going to have challenges in your life. There needs to be a balance and a give and take between the two, or you'll have a schizophrenic crack-up. At the basis of our thinking and feeling nature is this place called Eden, where all of our needs are taken care of. But everything is in a potential state. There's a passive energy to it. There's that sense that everything is possible, but nothing seems to be happening when we're talking about Eden. So we have this serpent, that entices Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. Now, you notice there's no mention about an apple. That, of course, has become part of our folklore. Some Bible teacher at some point inserted the apple so you had some picture of what kind of fruit it was. You could just picture somebody, well, what kind of fruit was it? I don't know. Well, let's just say it's an apple. But it's the fruit of the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. So she gives it to Adam, and then what happens? God's like, what's going on, guys? I told you to do this. And they're expelled from this Garden of Eden. Now, evangelicals and all blame the woman. And women, not only Eve, but women have had to deal with this whole patriarchal attitude about women and the woman not being equal or any of that. So, I think differently. The serpent. Again, if each of these things are symbolic, the serpent represents wisdom. It's an Eastern symbol of wisdom. In fact, if you've ever noticed that, that medical science thing, there's the staff and there are two snakes working their way up, up the rod. The snake hugs the earth. It crawls along the earth, hugging with its entire length of its body. But there's also something else that's interesting about the snake, and that is its bone structure resembles our spine. So the serpent represents that wisdom of the physical world. Yet there is a desire within us that is stirred by the serpent to experience life, to use our five senses, our thinking and our feeling nature to actually create things in the physical world. And the knowledge of the tree of good and evil can be expanded to the knowledge of polarity in the physical world. So when we move from the spiritual world into the physical world, there's good and evil. There's hot and cold. There's here. There's male, there's female. There's all of this polarized energy. Electricity is an alternating current of positive and negative. Even things we can't see, have applied to these various physical laws. So, some would say, Eden sure sounds like a nice place to be. So, yeah, everything would exist as potential, possibilities, no specifics, no experiences, no decisions, no need to learn anything. No problems, never getting sick. You would be the brightest vegetable on the face of the earth. So, we didn't have to really make the decision because the Eve aspect of us made the decision. And what happened? After 9 months for each of us in the Garden of Eden, we are suddenly thrust into this world. Our eyes are opened, and a lot more. But yeah, our father and our mother got together under whatever circumstances and weave this body, and now suddenly we're inhabiting it, and we're willing to step out into the world with all of its pleasantness and unpleasantness, all of its good or evil. I know Carl and I, back when we first discovered Unity and were exploring, we took this one Groff breathwork workshop. And through meditation and the techniques they use, you actually re-experience your birth. And for me, it was interesting. What I recognized, one, was that my soul entered the body just before the birth. And suddenly I had the birth, and my first thought was, what did I do wrong that my mom would reject me like this? And it was what an interesting insight. It's like, yeah, we are so willing to take on the guilt. We're so willing to take on that we did something wrong when nothing was wrong. I mean, my body was formed, and my mom needed me out of there. And I got out of there. So, we come into this physical world. We do some stupid, harmless, harmful, sometimes foolish things. But when it seems like in a lot of the evangelical traditions, when they say, well, why, you know, why do we do these bad things? And the answer is man's disobedience and wickedness. Disobedience and wickedness. But we're told right here in the story that Adam and Eve had not yet partaken of the fruit of good and evil. How could they know that what they were doing was disobedient and wicked? It doesn't make any sense. And we don't do these things because we're disobedient or wicked. There are times that we delude ourselves into thinking that we're separate from God and that we're up against it alone. But we luckily have the tools that we can move through that confusion. We take our chances. We take our chances. And when you think back over your life, think of all of the pleasant and the unpleasant experiences that we've had, and that some of those unpleasant experiences were the very things that we needed to have the spiritual growth that we have had. We want to use the five senses. We want to see. We want to taste. We want to smell. We want to feel. We want to hear all of the wonders of the world. Yeah, we're going to make mistakes, but hey, that's part of the game. So should Eve be condemned? Should she be celebrated? Well, should our emotional nature be condemned? Or should they be celebrated? I'm going to have Duncan put up the next slide here. So here are this week's takeaways. Each of us has an Adam and Eve within us. We couldn't possibly live without it. We need a thinking and feeling nature in balance and connected, communicating with each other. And that allows us to experience life. And experiencing life has its pleasant and its unpleasant. So we're willing to go out there and take our chances. We're willing to follow the guidance that comes. And that's why it's important for us to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, to be willing to put our life experience in divine order. And when we put it in divine order, we do get the guidance as to what's the proper step to take next. Because so many times we get caught up in thinking that we know the way, when actually there's a better way. It might be the scenic route, or there might be a next step that we missed that allows the rest of the journey to unfold. So, there may be a lot about our life that we regret or that we wish had changed, but there's also a lot more about the life that we don't want to miss. This week's closing story is from Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News.